Okay, in this video, I wanted to give you a quick little overview of how I set up when I get ready to can. This process is the exact same whether I am pressure canning or water bath canning, and also for no matter what I am canning, okay? Whether it's fruit, vegetables, or meat, this process is the same. So let's begin here at the stove. So whenever I go to can, the first thing I do, again, whether I'm pressure canning or water bath canning, but today I'm actually going to be pressure canning, but no matter which canner I use, I have my jars heating up in water in my canner, and I put water in the jars to keep them standing upright. I always have a kettle full of hot water because you might need it. And then I also will always have 1 or 2 pots of whatever food item I am going to be processing that day. So, sometimes this might be full of applesauce. Today I'm going to be canning some butternut squash. So this water is heating up because I'm going to cook the butternut squash for a couple minutes before I actually process it. I will always have 1 or 2 pots of the food item I'm going to can. So, and I have everything laid out in the order and the area that I need it. Okay, so this is my process. I will take my jar lifter. And then I will dump out the hot water from the jar. And then I'll place the jar in this towel here so it doesn't burn my hand. And then I bring it over here and I put it here on something to protect the countertop. It can be a pot holder or another clean towel. And by the way, this was a clean towel over there. And then I will put my funnel on my jar. And if I am going to be using salt, or like if I was making pickled okra or pickles, I'll have some kind of spices sitting over here. And that is when I would add them into here. I always do that first. And then the next thing that I do is I will take the ladle. And I will scoop out my food. Like today I'm going to be canning butternut squash, so I will use this slotted spoon to scoop out the butternut squash cubes and pour them in here. And then I just use a bamboo stick here, like a chopstick, to, move it around. And then I always also have to measure the headspace. So we have 1 inch of headspace, 1/2 inch of headspace, 1/4 inch of headspace. Okay. And once I get the food in there for whatever the recipe calls for the correct headspace, then I will use the ladle and scoop up the liquid and fill it over the food as well, up to the appropriate headspace. And again, I will use this chopstick to move the food around and remove any air bubbles if possible. I'll check the headspace again. If it's all good, I remove the funnel, and then I take the clean cloth and we wipe the mouth of the jar off really well. Make sure there's no food particles or spices or seasonings or anything whatsoever. And this hot water here, just before I take a jar out of the canner, this hot water will have been poured on these lids. It's no longer necessary, but I still do it. So after I have the food in here and I've wiped the mouth and I'm ready to put a lid on it, and then we take a lid out and I use my clean cloth and I just quickly wipe the lid off and we center it on the jar, and then we take a band and tighten it down just to fingertip tight. Okay, and fingertip tight is where you just put the band on there and you put it on until you meet resistance like this, and you just tighten it with your fingers. Okay, you're not using your wrist or your arm muscles or even this. You're just tightening it until it's your fingertip tight. Some people say until you meet resistance, then you go a 1/4 turn more. It doesn't matter, it feels the same. You just put it on and you just tighten with your fingers, okay? And then I take the jar and I put it into the canner, and then I continue that on with all the other jars until everything is in here and ready to go. And then we put our lid on the canner, whether it is a pressure canner or a water bath canner, and we just have to make sure that we have the right amount of water in the canner, whether it's a pressure canner or a water bath canner. They require a different amount of water, either to be in the bottom of the jar or to cover the jar. So you'll want to see what your canner calls for, okay? But anyway, so that's what we do. And then once you have it all ready and the water level is correct, then you put the lid on the canner and then you start the whole process. If you are pressure canning, then you do not start counting the time to process it until your pressure gauge, until your PSI reaches the required amount. Once it reaches the required pounds of pressure, then you start your canning time, okay, your processing time. And so, yeah, and then, you just follow the recipe for all those details. But no, like I said in the beginning, no matter what I can, whether water bath or pressure canning, whether fruit, vegetables, or meat or broth, it doesn't matter. This is the exact same setup that I use. The only thing that varies will be the spices and seasoning, whether I'm using the water bath canner or the pressure canner, and what I have in this pot. Okay? So, so I hope that kind of gave you some insight as to how to prepare, and thank you for watching.